Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving deep, really deep, into the life of, well, I guess you could say a complicated figure, J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb.
Yeah, a pretty heavy title to carry, right?
I mean, talk about a legacy. We've got some really interesting stuff lined up to guide us. Excerpts from the Rest is History podcast, even some of
Yeah.
Oppenheimer's own poetry.
We're going to try to get a real feel for who he was, not just the science, but the man behind it all. The good and, well, yeah, the not so good.
So where do we even begin with a guy like this?
Well, let's rewind all the way back. Imagine young Oppenheimer, New York City.
Big city lights, huh?
Not exactly. Think more like privilege, born into a wealthy family, German, Jewish parents, surrounded by art, culture, you name it.
Sounds like they really encouraged his, intellectual curiosity?
Oh, absolutely. And he was a sponge, excelled in school, soaking up knowledge left and right, poetry, minerals, physics, you name it, he was into it.
A real Renaissance man.
Yeah, you could say that. But The Rest is History podcast, it paints a bit of a different picture, too. Mentions he wasn't exactly Mr. Popular, actually got bullied at summer camp for being, well, too intellectual. Hard to imagine, right? Teased for reading George Eliot.
Kids can be cruel.
Yeah, and it seemed like Oppenheimer, he always felt a little different, like he didn't quite fit in.
Makes you wonder how that shaped him, those early experiences.
I think it definitely played a role. Now, flash forward a bit. He goes to Harvard, starts with chemistry, but quickly, physics pulls him in.
That's a big leap.
Well, not for Oppenheimer. Brilliant mind. But even at Cambridge, surrounded by the best of the best, there were, let's call them personality clashes.
You mean his run-ins with, what was his name, Ernest Rutherford?
Yeah, the guy who practically mapped out the atom. But Oppenheimer, he was intense, driven, never backed down from a challenge.
I guess that can be both a blessing and a curse, huh?
Exactly. Fueled his work, but also created some friction, especially in his personal life.
Speaking of which, there are those stories, right? The incident with the apple.
Ah, yeah, the alleged attempt to poison his tutor. It's a dark side, no doubt. Makes you think about the complexities of genius.
And that's not all, is it? He reportedly got physical with a friend, had an altercation on a train. There's a pattern here.
Definitely a troubled side. It's like this inner turmoil he couldn't quite shake.
So here's this guy, brilliant, but battling his own demons, and yet he's making waves in physics, publishing groundbreaking work over in Germany, no less.
Right, and this is key because this is all happening right before the world changes forever.
Because of him?
Well, in a way, yes. But it's a chain reaction, right? He
Yeah.
becomes a professor at Berkeley, leading the Rad Lab, a hub for all this cutting-edge physics research. But it's also where his politics start to show.
Politics.
Oh, yeah. Don't forget, it's the 1930s. The world's on edge. Fascism on the rise, the Depression. It's a lot. People are looking for answers, looking for change.
Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Where did he fall on all this?
Well, he falls for Jean Tatlock. Passionate communist, medical student. They're attending communist gatherings. He's donating to left-wing causes. It's a whole thing.
A whole thing that the FBI definitely noticed, right? They opened a file on him in 1941.
Yep, those political leanings, they come back to bite him, let me tell you. But hold that thought. Picture this. 1939, the news breaks. German scientists have split the atom.
Wait, really? Just like that?
Yeah, it sends shockwaves. Suddenly, a weapon of unbelievable power, and it's in the hands of, well, Nazis.
So this is it. This is the starting pistol for the atomic bomb, right?
You got it. The Manhattan Project. Top secret. All hands on deck. America has to beat the Nazis to the punch.
And they choose Oppenheimer.
Despite everything. Colonel Leslie Groves, the military head honcho, tough as nails, he sees Oppenheimer's brilliance, his drive, and he decides to roll the dice.
What a gamble. I mean, with all those red flags in his final, it's mind-blowing.
It is. And get this, Oppenheimer, he knows just the place for this secret lab. Los Alamos, New Mexico. He'd been there as a kid.
So it's personal for him, too. Wow. A boys' school turned into a top-secret research center, working day and night under pressure, racing against time. It's like something out of a movie.
Yeah, a pretty high-stakes movie.
Yeah.
And all the while, Oppenheimer's past, it's like a shadow hanging over him. He has this clandestine meeting. A friend connects him with Soviet contacts. They're fishing for information.
Oh, man. This is wartime, right? Espionage everywhere.
He refuses, doesn't give them anything, but he doesn't report it either. Not right away.
That's a big no-no.
Yeah, it raises suspicions. And to make matters worse, he's still seeing Jean Tatlock. The FBI is freaking
I
out.
bet this is like a spy thriller unfolding.
Oh, it gets better. They're tapping his phones, reading his mail, even his chauffeur's an
It's
informant.
his own chauffeur.
Crazy.
And then, plot twist, Niels Bohr, the famous Danish physicist, he gets smuggled out of Nazi-occupied Europe, shows up at Los Alamos,
Whoa.
and he confirms it. The Germans, they're working on a bomb. The stakes just went through the roof. Talk about pressure. So, Bohr, wasn't he all about, like, sharing scientific knowledge, working together?
Yeah, that was his ideal. In Oppenheimer, he was drawn to that, this idealistic vision.
But come on, we're talking about a world war. Sharing the secrets to the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
It's just not realistic.
No, not at all. And this is the struggle that plays out, right? Science versus war, potential good versus the potential for absolute destruction. It's all there in Oppenheimer's story.
And then boom, Roosevelt dies, Germany surrenders, it's over in Europe.
But the Pacific, that's still raging. And the Manhattan Project, they've got their target now. Japan.
Tokyo, the firebombing. I mean, over 100,000 people died. It was horrific.
And the possibility of a land invasion was looking more and more likely and more costly in terms of lives.
So the bomb, it starts to look like, well, maybe it's the only way.
The only way to end the war quickly, to save lives. That's the argument anyway.
It's a heavy decision no matter how you look at it.
Yeah. And they picked the test site, Jornada del Muerto.
Journey of death. That's ominous.
Oppenheimer, he chooses the codename Trinity.
Maybe thinking about that poetry he loves so much, John Donne.
Who knows? But it's loaded with meaning. And there he stands, J. Robert Oppenheimer. Genius, but troubled. About to unleash a force that will change the world forever. It's July 16th, 1945. The countdown echoes through the Jornada del Muerto.
Journey of death.
Yeah. And then silence. A blinding flash. Night turns into day. The shockwave, it knocks people off their feet miles away.
I get chills just thinking about it. The Atomic Age, it's born right there in the New Mexico desert.
A scientific triumph, no doubt. But it comes with a price, a heavy price.
Well, Oppenheimer, I mean, he knew it. He said it himself. We knew the world would not be the same.
And later he quotes the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
Wow, powerful stuff. The weight of that, the burden, you can almost feel it.
This brilliant mind now wrestling with the moral consequences of his creation.
So the bomb's ready, but the war in Europe, it's over. What now?
All eyes turn to Japan. They're still fighting. And the question everyone's asking is, do we use it?
The Rest is History podcast, they really dig into this debate. Some argued it was the only way to end the war, to save lives.
American lives, Japanese lives, a long, drawn-out war, it would have been a bloodbath.
But on the other hand, I mean, you're talking about a weapon that can wipe out entire cities.
Indiscriminate killing, civilians, and the radiation, the long-term effects, it's horrific.
A moral nightmare.
No easy answers. But on August 6, 1945, Hiroshima. 3 days later, Nagasaki.
It's hard to even fathom the destruction. Tens of thousands dead in an instant. And the fallout, the radiation poisoning, it went on for years.
The world was never the same. Warfare had entered a new, terrifying era.
And Oppenheimer, he saw it firsthand. The power he helped unleash.
It changed him. He starts speaking out, advocating for international control of atomic energy. We gotta prevent another arms race, he says.
But it's too late, right? Cold War's already heating up. The Soviets test their own bomb in '49.
And suddenly, it's a whole new kind of fear. Two superpowers, both with their fingers on the button.
And Oppenheimer, his past, those communist ties, they come back with a vengeance.
It's tragic, really. His brilliance, his connections, his willingness to challenge authority, they turn against him.
He's accused of being a Soviet sympathizer, obstructing the hydrogen bomb project.
McCarthyism, the Red Scare, it was a dark time. People were afraid, suspicious.
Innocent people accused, careers ruined, lives shattered. And Oppenheimer, he gets caught right in the middle of it all.
1954, they haul him in for this security clearance hearing. It's brutal.
After everything he did for his country, they question his loyalty, his character. It's heartbreaking.
They revoke his security clearance. He's blacklisted. Done.
Just like that, it's over. His career, everything he worked for.
A lot of people saw it as a witch hunt, politically motivated.
A brilliant mind brought down by fear and paranoia. It makes you think, about how fragile everything is.
From the top of the world to, well, an outcast. Oppenheimer's story, it's a cautionary tale.
It's a tough pill to swallow,
Yeah.
Here's Oppenheimer. He unlocks the secrets of the atom, changes the course of history, and then, boom, He's a pariah.
It's a Shakespearean tragedy, almost. But even after that security clearance debacle, she doesn't just disappear.
So what does he do? I mean, his career is basically toast.
He writes, he lectures, he keeps thinking about these huge questions, the ethical stuff, the philosophical fallout of the atomic age. It's like he can't let it go.
I guess when you unleash that kind of power on the world, it stays with you.
For sure. And remember Bohr. That whole idea of international cooperation, controlling this technology, preventing a nuclear apocalypse, Oppenheimer, he picks up that torch. He becomes this voice of warning.
But no one's really listening, are they? The Cold War's in full swing.
No, not really. But he keeps pushing, and his poetry becomes this really interesting window into his struggle,
Yeah, I was looking at some of his poems earlier. It's heavy stuff.
He's wrestling with these huge ideas. Scientific progress, human nature, the beauty of discovery, but also the potential for utter destruction.
The day the sun rose twice,
Yeah.
right? The Trinity test. He captures that awe, that fear, all mixed together.
Exactly. It's like he's trying to make sense of it all. The scientist in him, driven by this thirst for knowledge, butting heads with the human being who sees what that knowledge can do in the wrong hands.
It's a tough balancing act.
And his later years, they're marked by this tension. In 1963, he gets the Enrico Fermi Award, a huge honor in physics. But it's almost like too little, too late.
Yeah, the damage is done, his reputation, his career.
It's bittersweet. This guy, he achieves greatness but then gets dragged through the mud. A victim of politics, really.
Makes you think about the price of progress, and how easily things can go wrong.
It's a lesson for all of us, really. Science, politics, the human condition, they're all intertwined.
So when we look back at Oppenheimer, what's his legacy? What do we take away from all this?
I think on one hand, he's a testament to human ingenuity, what we can achieve for better or worse.
The power of the human mind.
But he's also a warning sign, a reminder that ambition, progress, it can have a dark side, and that we're all vulnerable to, to fear, to manipulation.
It's a call to action, isn't it? To think about the ethics of what we're doing, consequences of our actions.
For sure. Oppenheimer's life, it was a roller coaster. Brilliance, tragedy, the whole 9 yards. And it's a story that still resonates today.
Because we're still facing those same questions, aren't we? Nuclear proliferation, artificial intelligence, the power of technology keeps growing.
Absolutely. It's up to us to figure out how to harness that power for good, to make sure we don't end up repeating the mistakes of the past.
Well, on that note, I think we'll leave it there for today. It's been, a lot to digest.
Definitely a lot to think about. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the life of J. Robert Oppenheimer. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.